All right, welcome back, everybody. It is time for another deep dive. This is your weekly, shortcut to staying ahead in the Brooklyn Fantasy Basketball Association.
Absolutely.
Whether you're prepping for trash talk or just insanely curious about what's going on around the league.
Right.
Either way, you're in the right place. We've got you covered.
For sure.
Speaking of BFBA buzz, did you catch Holly Smith, owner of the Brooklyn Stoop Kids, on Conversations with the Commissioner?
I did, yeah. Delonte's really pumping out that content, huh?
Yeah, he is. But here's the thing. We are diving even deeper today.
Okay.
We're going to go beyond those headlines, beyond the interviews, and into, the stats that matter, the scores, the matchups.
The real nitty-gritty.
The real nitty-gritty. Now, Cedric, from the NY Mindset of Fighters, we appreciate your, shall we say, passionate feedback on our last deep dive.
Passionate, yeah.
But guess what? We're back, baby. Season 2.
That's right.
Apparently, Delonte sees something in us.
Or maybe he just lost the vote.
Maybe.
Either way, we're here.
Either way, we're here to break down the Week 5 BFBA action, from standings to scores and everything in between.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with the standings, the big picture. And right at the top, undefeated, we've got Damien's The Evil Empire.
4-0. Perfect record.
Perfect 4-0, but the question is it just luck? Or is there something more to their dominance?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you look at their roster, though, you can see Damien had a clear strategy going into the draft. Prioritized consistent high scorers. I mean, locked in 3 of the top 5 projected points leaders.
Wow.
That kind of foundation sets you up for success right out of the gate.
It sounds like, Damien really knew what he was doing.
It seems like it, yeah.
But let's not forget, it's a long season. Things can change quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
Just ask the 3 teams currently tied at 3-1, BXBA Mob, Brooklyn Vikings Valhalla, and 2 Legit. And get this, 5 teams are battling it out at 2-2.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting. With so many teams clustered together, every week is a potential turning point. A couple of key wins or losses could completely reshuffle those rankings.
Yeah, talk about pressure.
Right.
And speaking of pressure, remember Holly Smith and the Brooklyn Stoop Kids?
Oh, yeah.
Fresh off that commissioner interview?
Feeling good.
Feeling good, and then bam, they barely squeaked out a win against the Beaufort Bombers in Week 4 by just 14.2 points.
Sometimes the spotlight can be a little too bright. You gotta wonder, though, was it just a bad week, or is there something more there?
Right.
Did they make any, questionable roster moves after all the attention?
That's a great point. We'll have to keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
But, while some teams were barely escaping, others were absolutely crushing it.
For sure.
The Brooklyn Vikings Valhalla put on a clinic against Valar Morgulis, racking up a 214.4 point difference.
Talk about a statement win.
That wasn't just a win. That was a display of, fantasy basketball mastery.
Oh, yeah. The Vikings starting lineup averaged a player efficiency rating over 25 for the week. That means they were maximizing every minute on the court, scoring efficiently, just plain dominating.
Okay. That's impressive, but the sham gods weren't far behind, dismantling Trader Danny by a whopping 363 points.
Commissioner Delonte is really showing why he's the commish.
He's not messing around.
No. Delonte knows this league inside and out. He's got a knack for spotting those undervalued players and really maximizing their potential.
Right.
So, yeah, don't underestimate him.
All right, enough looking back. Let's dive into the main event. The Week 5 matchups, they are currently underway.
Okay, let's go.
And let me tell you, there are some potential upsets brewing. Upsets that could shake up those standings we were just talking about.
Interesting. Okay. One thing that's been on my mind lately is the impact of injuries.
Oh, yeah.
We've already seen a few key players go down.
For sure.
And that can completely derail a team's, momentum.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a constant game of chess.
Yeah.
Trying to anticipate who's going to stay healthy.
Right.
Who's going to be out.
Exactly.
And then those waiver wire pickups become, crucial.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about finding replacements. It's about finding the right replacements,
Right. Yeah.
You need players who fit your team's strategy and who can fill those specific gaps in your lineup.
So it's not just about points. It's about understanding, player roles, team dynamics.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about a specific team that's caught my eye.
Okay.
The Brooklyn Stoop Kids.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, they barely won in Week 4
Yeah.
after Holly's big interview.
Right.
Are they feeling the pressure? Did they make any rash decisions?
Well, it's hard to say for sure,
Right.
but their Week 5 matchup against the South Korea Seoul brothers could be telling.
Okay.
If they come out flat or make more, I don't know, questionable roster moves,
Right.
it might be a sign that they're letting the pressure get to them.
So should we be worried about the Stoop kids?
I wouldn't hit the panic button just yet. They've got a talented roster, and Holly's a smart owner.
Yeah.
But they need to find a way to regain their focus
Right.
and get back to playing their game.
Okay. All right, let's circle back to some of those other Week 5 matchups we were discussing. The battle between Too Legit to Quit and the Brooklyn Vikings Valhalla. Still too close to call.
Yeah.
Both teams are playing at a high level.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see how their, different styles will clash.
This is where coaching comes into play.
Yeah.
A good fantasy owner knows how to adjust their strategy based on their opponent's strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
Will the Vikings stick with their efficient approach, or will they try to match Too Legit to Quit's volume?
And on the other side, will Too Legit to Quit try to force the Vikings out of their comfort zone?
It's a fascinating, strategic battle.
It is.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about the coaches, it's about the players, too. Sometimes a player just steps up and has a monster week, completely exceeding expectations. And that can be the difference maker in a close matchup.
Speaking of difference makers, we can't forget about the showdown between the Evil Empire and BFBA Mob. This is the matchup everyone's been waiting for.
It's the, irresistible force meeting the immovable object.
Right.
Damien's methodical approach versus Randy's, explosive lineup. Who will prevail?
I don't know. The tension is palpable.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? I think this matchup comes down to one key factor. 3-point shooting.
Okay.
If BFBA Mob can get hot from beyond the arc, they have a real chance to upset the Evil Empire.
I completely agree. Three-pointers are, they're a great equalizer in fantasy basketball. They can swing a matchup in a hurry.
Right.
And BFBA Mob they have some sharpshooters on their roster.
They do. So all eyes will be on that 3-point line in that matchup.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about those other Week 5 battles that are still unfolding. We've got the DC Hustlers trying to hold off the Beaufort Bombers and the South Korea Seoul brothers looking to solidify their position in the standings.
Yeah. Every game matters at this point in the season.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think we're going to see some surprising outcomes in the weeks to come.
Okay.
Teams are starting to figure each other out, and the competition is only going to get more intense.
I love the unpredictability is what makes fantasy basketball so much fun.
Right.
And speaking of unpredictability, what are some of the strategic moves you think owners should be considering as we head into, the second half of the season?
Well, first and foremost, they need to be monitoring that waiver wire like hawks.
Okay.
Injuries happen, players go on hot streaks, and there are always diamonds in the rough waiting to be discovered.
So don't be afraid to make those pickups and, shake things up.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to make trades either. Okay. Sometimes a fresh start can be just what a player needs. And a savvy owner can use trades to address weaknesses on their roster and build a championship caliber team.
Trades can be tricky though, right? You don't want to give up too much or end up with a player who doesn't, fit your system.
Absolutely. It's all about finding the right balance. You need to analyze your team's needs, assess the value of your players, and be willing to negotiate.
Right.
And sometimes you just got to take a chance and make a bold move.
Speaking of bold moves, have you noticed any potential trade targets that stand out to you?
One player I've got my eye on is, wait a minute, I'm not giving away all my secrets.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll let you keep those, trade secrets close to the vest. But I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so. The key takeaway here is that fantasy basketball is a dynamic and, ever-evolving game.
Right.
You can't just set your lineup and forget about it. You need to stay engaged, adapt to changing circumstances, and be willing to make those tough decisions.
Well said. And with that, we've reached the end of part 2 of our BFBA deep dive. All right, so before we wrap up this deep dive into the BFBA,
Yeah.
I want to throw one final question out to you.
Okay.
As we head into the second half of the season. What's your biggest takeaway? Are you feeling confident about your team's chances? Or are you starting to sweat a little bit?
I think this is the point in the season where we really separate the contenders
Okay.
from the pretenders.
Right.
The owners who are truly committed to winning will be doing everything they can to improve their rosters.
Right.
Whether it's, scouring the waiver wire, making strategic trades, or just staying on top of the latest news and injury reports.
So it's all about staying engaged and like adapting to the ever-changing landscape of the BFBA.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a little bit of luck.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes all it takes is one breakout performance or, a lucky bounce of the ball to swing a matchup in your favor.
That's what makes fantasy basketball so exciting.
For sure.
It's a mix of skill, strategy, and a little bit of good fortune. And you know what? I have a feeling this season is going to come down to the wire.
I couldn't agree more. We've got a tight race at the top.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of teams that are capable of, making a run for the championship. It's going to be a wild ride.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this week's BFBA Deep Dive. We covered a lot of ground, from those nail-biting Week 4 finishes to the potential upsets brewing in Week 5. We've talked strategy, roster construction, and the importance of staying engaged throughout the season.
Absolutely. But remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The BFDA landscape is constantly shifting, and there are sure to be plenty more twists and turns along the way.
So buckle up, fantasy fans, and get ready for an epic second half of the season. And be sure to join us next week for another BFBA Deep Dive, where we'll break down all the latest scores, analyze those key matchups, and maybe even drop a few more trade secrets along the way. Until then, keep playing hard, and may your fantasy teams reign supreme.